Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Graying Jedi podcast. I am Urza Master. Joining me as always, Psyllium Maas, Jedi Master, and Lord Uther, Jedi Master. And I am also a Jedi Master. And Jedi Masters, we dive into the fourth episode of Skeleton Crew on Disney Plus this week. The new kids show, if you want to call it that, but it's definitely appealing to adults. But this has been a real special episode, this number 4, so I don't want to waste too much time. Psyllium Maas, tell us a little bit more about episode 4 and the gallant crew we've assembled.
Thank you, Jedi Masters, Urza Master, Lord Uther. Thank you, Graying Jedi fans. Welcome to 2025. Happy New Year, and we hope you had a safe, festive, and joyous holiday season. And we can't wait to show you what Pending Rebrand is up to in the coming months and the new year. So stay tuned. Keep uploading those pages. Keep your friends subscribing. Keep checking out the archives as well as all the new content. We wish you all a wonderful 2025, and we're definitely looking forward to it. Skeleton Crew, episode 4. Titled, I Can't Say I Remember No Atten, which of course is SM-33, our pirate droid with one eye and a creature who makes a home in the eye socket of the other. This one was written by showrunners Christopher Ford and John Watts. Again, they've penned every episode to date. But it was directed by a pair of Academy Award-winning filmmakers. Known collectively around town as the Daniels, Daniel Kwan, born in 1988, and Daniel Scheinert, born in 1987. So they were just babes in the woods when I was starting high school. Oh my. They are surrealist, comedic, science fiction genre filmmakers. Their other works are very hard to categorize easily. So I was looking forward in anticipation of what they would bring their filmmaking abilities to something that's somewhat structured like Star Wars. I mean, when you think surrealist comedy and out there wackiness, Star Wars is not the first franchise that comes to mind. So we'll get into that. The Daniels have done 2 features. Their first was in 2016. It was called Swiss Army Man, which I've seen. It starred Paul Dano, who played the Riddler in Matt Reeves' The Batman, in addition to appearing in Cowboys and Aliens and There Will Be Blood and all sorts of other titles. Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame, Mr. Potter himself. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who we all know, of course, is Hera Syndulla, General Syndulla, as well as Ewan McGregor's wife. The picture, like I said, this was their first foray into Hollywood. It was about a man marooned on an island, Paul Dano, with a corpse, played by Daniel Radcliffe. And the corpse was extremely flatulent. And again, I'm describing the actual plot of this film. So he uses the flatulence of the corpse and rides him like a jet ski from island to island trying to get back to civilization. So it's like Castaway with a lot of fart jokes. And then other parts of his body, particularly one that points the way home like a compass, after he shows the corpse a swimsuit magazine that's washed up on shore. You see where this is going. It's almost like a Saturday Night Live skit stretched to 95 minutes, and it's really, really good. I kid you not. So if you have not seen Swiss Army Man, it might be worth it. Believe me, it's bizarre. It's like David Lynch meets Terry Gilliam meets, you haven't seen it before, but it's definitely worth a look. That, of course, got them with Michelle Kwan and Ki-Hai Kwan, who won an Oscar for his performance. Michelle Kwan, Jamie Lee Curtis, Everything Everywhere All at Once in 2022. And that film swept major categories in that year's Oscars. The Daniels won for Best Picture, Best Directors, and Best Original Screenplay, which they wrote. So again, This would be kind of like hiring Ridley Scott to do an episode of Andor. You just kind of bristle in anticipation, like what will they bring to the table? And they did not disappoint, although they kept some of that surrealism in check. Instead, we had a planet that looked suspiciously like the children's homeworld of Ad-Atten, except it was actually at Akron, one of the other hidden planets that the Old Republic or the High Republic had kept secret from the rest of the galaxy. This one was more war-torn. We had two tribes basically in perpetual conflict. The Troiks, who, probably through the Daniels, identified as French, and the Hattans, or Hattans. We didn't really spend much time with them, but I'm sure they were equally bizarre and otherworldly. The Hattans were being fought by the Troiks because the Hattans were accused of stealing Eopes, which you might recognize from Star Wars The Phantom Menace and the Obi-Wan Kenobi series we just finished dissecting on the Graying Jedi here at Pending Rebrand. Be sure to check those episodes out. Eopes are the camel-like steeds that Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan like to use in the Tatooine desert. They're on this planet as well. They apparently have been pilfered, and the Troiks are mad about it and want to go to war with the Hattans. During the course of the episode, our crew is split up and actually ends up on either side of the conflict. So that was a nice little twist there. This episode primarily, if you've been enjoying the children and their characterizations, this was a Neil favored forward episode, the little blue elephant. And he bonds with the daughter of the Troik general, and her name I think was Hannah. And so those two spend a good portion of the episode debating the morality of war, the ethics of it. And Neil will break your heart or melt your heart, is that he isn't interested in Star Wars. He just wants everyone to apologize and lock hands and be peaceful and so forth. So, and the only time he ever got into a fight was with one of his little brothers, and he hurt his trunk. So Neil is definitely a peacekeeper. And if you didn't find him adorable and relatable before this episode, by the end of it, you certainly will. Eventually, circumstances get our crew back reunited safely and taken to the Fallen Sanctum, where we may have the coordinates / map to get them back to Ad-Atten, except there's yet another twist. And we also spend a little time with Fern, the quote captain of this ragtag band. And in the first 3 episodes, she's been sort of cocky and very, I can get myself out of any situation. And here we see some vulnerability in a touching scene between her and Wim, who just wanted to go on an adventure because Ad-Atten was so boring. So there's some nice character-y moments there, followed by a late twist in which the Daniels use a Sam Raimi-style camera angle when the children are threatened by SM-33. Turns out he's been to Akron before. Turns out he knows how to get to Ad-Atten, and he was told by his previous captain that if anybody came looking for it, he was going to tear them. How did they put it, Urza? He was going to tear them
limb from limb.
Yes, that's exactly correct. And so we had a little thing where our good robot, put good in air quotes, turned bad again, and then they had to be saved by Jod and so forth. Gentlemen, like I said, if you were tuning in for hot dog fingers from Everything Everywhere All at Once, or a giant bagel that represents the center of the galaxy or so forth, then maybe you were slightly underwhelmed. But if you were looking for just little flourishes and stylistic stuff, and really an emphasis on the character, like I said, getting nice scenes with Neil and Hannah and Fern and Wynn. That's exactly what the Daniels brought. I feel like what this proves to me is that you can take filmmakers, that are very conventional, and you can take filmmakers that are very unconventional, and you can bring them into Star Wars, and they can be value added to the storytelling, but without calling so much attention to themselves that basically you're like, well, wait a minute, this doesn't feel authentic or part of the narrative. It was basically seamless from the other ones that had come before it. So there was zero fall off or drop off or like, wait, this thing sticks out like a sore thumb. And as someone who appreciates filmmaking and writing and so forth, that's what I like to see. I don't like to see jagged, unconnected, disconnected, little, oh, look, we're here, we're doing standalones. Just like other directors coming, we'll get a Bryce Dallas Howard here in a couple of weeks and so forth. We've already seen her work on Mandalorian and Boba Fett and Ahsoka and so forth. We know she's going to do a fabulous job. Gentlemen, how were you? Do you remember? No AT-ATing?
This was surprisingly a refreshing episode. The whole child warfare thing, like, it didn't get political, which I liked. It could have, for sure. But it definitely just kind of played up the childhood innocence thing in a very, being of the same generation as these directors, it was very nostalgic for me. The way this kind of went off and into this whole why can't we all be friends / transformative interaction between Neil and Hannah. It was really just good, and it was fun, like seeing our little lead actor child get to shoot a gun and have it sort of whoop him up pretty good, but be praised for his spirit. Like, it was just kind of a wholesome sort of episode, despite the fact they could have taken this in a much heavier direction. There could have been a lot more danger, a lot more scary factor, which would have been fine, by the way. But the way they played it up was definitely more on the comedic end. It felt like it had real stakes, and it didn't feel like it was Deus Ex Machina at the end, which I was a little worried about, because anytime you get like that sudden, I guess we're all safe, thanks to our plucky pirate captain, that would have felt like a letdown. This was actually pretty funny, and it did leave that air of mistrust of Jode, which I think is really important that they preserve. Although you can tell there's this sort of sense of they're developing a belonging. They're developing sort of this companionship that I think is important too, but it's not without a healthy dose of caution. And I think that's very nicely foiled with B-33 turning into a rage machine. And that was unexpected. It was suddenly scary without being overly scary. And that was something that I think was, we talked about this being kind of the Amblin movie-esque. That was something you got with like E.T. and you got with some of, like the Goonies, with Sloth. Scary, but not overly scary and not really dangerous, but there's an element there that makes it realistically dangerous. With the Fratellis, like, at no point do you really think they're going to cut out Chunk's tongue. Like, but they could. I mean, they got a dead guy, Richard Donner's in the freezer. Like, it's just such a nostalgic method of storytelling, and I felt like the direction in this particular episode really is reflective of my people. The 88ers, who would remember storytelling of this kind, and the uniqueness of their approach to putting the image on the screen. It brings you to the level of the kids here. You're seeing a lot through their eyes as a third party that, boy, it made me feel like a kid again. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It was just like, how in Mando, we talk about it being, this is Star Wars again. I feel like I'm in Star Wars. I feel like I'm watching Star Wars. I feel like I'm a kid in Star Wars. Like this zapped me right back to, eating corn pops on the floor on Saturday morning, watching the Goonies on a bootleg VHS tape, which yes, I do have somewhere. It was just really cool. And the story itself, kudos to the writers, because I again have been trying to hate every episode. At like coming in at it like when is this gonna let me down? And yet again they've exceeded my expectations. Not that my bar was very high, but it blew past whatever expectations I had. And I really I don't have a whole lot else to say other than I feel like they're starting to wind down quickly, which makes me wonder how this story is going to wrap up this season. And if they are doing multiple seasons, I'm really starting to get curious. Like, how do they carry this forward?
Yeah, I was just thinking that they're going to have a Stranger Things problem if they don't. Like, probably need to make a decision, which I thought they already did, that they're going to do a second season. But
Oh, yeah. They're certainly talking about it.
they're talking about it. Well, by the time they better make a decision soon because these kids are going to be 21 before we know it. So they're going to outgrow
grow like
everything and
weeds.
turn into these these Stranger Things problem that you're going to have. So we'll see what happens there. I like the episode. To me, it was just moving the story forward, not in a bad way. I do like how it is keeping us on our toes. Right, you don't know if the robot's going to go off the edge at some point. It's kind of like Lost in Space, the first couple years when it was in black and white, where you didn't know if Robot was going to be good or bad. Like, he kind of walked that line, and then something happened, and he was always good.
Good
Right.
reference.
So I feel that, of course, it's a good reference because you're listening to the Graying Jedi podcast in 2025. It's incredible, is what it is. So, with that being said, every once in a while it contributes something. It could have to do with my shirt here
Oh,
that talks about a Vulcan massage. So this, by the way, a couple of our loyal viewers got me this shirt and also had that made for me as well. So 1.65 or 6'4" and growing, we continue to grow. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother podcast. Anyway, I do like how the series is keeping us on our toes because I almost wonder, this has to be, and maybe Psyllium Maas can give us a little bit of background real quick on this, but this has to be a tough thing to write, to not just keep that balance, but for the kids not to be too kidsy, which we see in Phantom Menace, right? Like that's a big problem that people have with Phantom Menace, besides the multitude of other issues. But what is Psyllium Maas? How do writers approach that, or what do you think the mentality is there? How are they keeping this going?
well, I mean, John Watts and Chris Ford, before they got into the Marvel Star Wars business, they did have that celebrated indie film Cop Car, which was also about two kids who go on a joyride and end up in danger, if you
Were they
will.
farting the whole time as well? Was that
There
the
was no
gas they
flatulence,
used?
and it was a little
Oh, okay.
more R-rated than we're used to so far. But if you just look at the through line of John Watts and Ford's collaborations and John Watts working with Marvel, he just intuitively, maybe like John Hughes was able to channel some of those 80s Reagan era teens into his celebrated films. Like, he just seems to be able to write for younger characters. Spider-Man's in high school, right? And MJ and everybody else. He just seems to be able. He has his ear tuned. I don't know if it's because as a parent or so forth, or he's got nephews and grandkids and whomever. I don't want to age him. He probably doesn't have grandkids. But yeah, writing for children, or younger characters, particularly if you're in your 40s or late 30s or so forth, it's probably not always easy to, again, not trip over and get into treacle and, mawkishness and the kind of stuff that makes Urza, go crazy at night, why he doesn't like child actors. I think less is more has always been, like, as a viewer for me. I think if Haley Steinfeld in True Grit for the Coen brothers, like when you can, or Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense, in 1999, when you can deliver an effective performance without doing all of the "I'm a kid, I'm so wacky." I mean, Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, even though that film is a rambunctious holiday classic, he's basically in a live-action cartoon, and yet you completely believe this 10-year-old kid or whatever is getting the best of these thieves and so forth. His scene-stealing cameo in Uncle Buck from 1989 also proved that his interrogation of John Candy was one of the reasons he got Home Alone. So I think with kids, less is more. And again, we've seen it when it looks bad, but I think Watson Ford collectively throughout their filmmaking right now, they just seem to be able to find the voice, of boy and girl characters alike. And like Jedi Master Urza suggests, every show we're not looking at this through Jod's eyes. I mean, Jude Law is, Academy celebrated actor and has a lot of stuff under his belt. And I think in different hands or lesser hands, we'd be like doing the show through him. He's the roguish pirate captain / possible Jedi Knight who's on the run and has, these kids he has to drag around from planet to planet. But we see Jod as audience members. We see him as the kids see him. So, I mean, his backstory and his contradictions and so forth, like, we the audience don't know what makes him tick, and neither do they. And I love that they've chosen to show us that we're experiencing this through Neil and KB and Fern and Wim. Every, new planet, every dangerous spaceport, and then in future episodes, every resort community has this allure of, like, when Jode, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but when Jode wants to dial in on a specific plan of action because he's a man of, we've got to get this done, the kids want to have a pillow fight. And actually do and that's the kind of thing, like the little detail there, they're not trying to be adults, but they're also not overwhelming us with, like, well, I'm just a crazy kid and I make poor decisions and I'm, so like I said, let's give them the credit because it's not easy. And sometimes it just feels forced and artificial. And when you know it, then it just makes your skin crawl and you say, I hate child actors, as a general rule of thumb.
Okay, real quick question. Just yes or no. Do we see these characters in the Grogu movie or this trilogy that we think we're going to possibly see? Do they show up?
I don't think in the Grogu movie. I think that, because don't forget, for every Star Wars fan out there that's watched The Mandalorian and watched every episode of The Mandalorian and can tell you, every planet they visited in 3 seasons, there's still a whole audience out there, millions and millions and millions of people that have no idea what the Child is, or Din Djarin, or Grand Admiral Thrawn. So the movie's job is going to be to introduce that to a global audience, if you will. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay the reach of Star Wars, but we have to remember, like my parents, they'll go see a Star Wars movie with me, but they're not going to sit and watch 36 episodes of The Mandalorian. So I think for that picture, it's going to be heavy with Grogu and Din Djarin and possible crossovers with Ahsoka and all that. I think these kids do end up, or Jod, or all of them, I think they do end up crossing paths. We said maybe a second season of Ahsoka. We have no idea what part of the galaxy they're still in. They could very easily run into Sabine and Ahsoka and, stranded on that otherworldly alien world. And I would put them in the Filoni Mandoverse film almost certainly, but I'd say it'd be a 30% chance that they would make an immediate cameo appearance in the Grogu film. That being said, if they popped up, I would be absolutely thrilled and delighted. Like, oh my God, look, it's Neil. Like, that would be fun. But I think that, I think we're more likely to see him in an Ahsoka or a second season of The Crew or the Mandoverse movie or all three. That's, like I said, no matter how this goes, I think we'll see these characters pop up in some other fashion or form. But yeah, so don't write them off just yet.
I agree. I think it's a no for Mando and Grogu, but future state, I think for sure we're going to see Jode in the trilogy. I don't think you bring in Jude Law just to do a TV series. How much of a role he's going to play, I'm not sure, but these kids definitely have potential. When they get all growed up, a couple of them could potentially be future Rey students, I think. What I like about this series is it shows us that Star Wars is still promising. There's still stories out there to tell that are compelling, interesting, different, and to be honest, it's just nice to see new Star Wars content that doesn't have to rely on Mark Hamill. Not that I would love to see Mark Hamill in anything. The Joker in Star Wars, let's do it. Let's do an animated Joker film in Star Wars. I love it. It's better than anything else DC's going to do.
With musical numbers.
Yes, musical numbers to ruin a very promising movie. But gentlemen, we do have to give this episode of Skeleton Crew a Kyber Crystal rating. I'm going to kick it off today with some festivity. I'm going to give it the Atari Video Computer System Catalog Grass Green Kyber Crystal. This brought me right back to being a kid of the early 90s and the movies of the late 80s that I grew up with that were constantly running on TV, edited and formatted to fit your screen and time constraints. Loved it. This episode was fantastic. I continue to be blown away by Skeleton Crew, so hats off to everyone involved over at Disney. Fantastic.
Uther, would you like to go?
Sure. I can go next. I give it a Celtic green. So I don't think that's working out there. Got this from one of my students. Yeah. So Celtic green, they're on the right path. Though this, I think this was kind of an episode to move things forward. I don't think it was a filler episode, and I think those are two different things. So the writers are making good use of their time here. They're not, we talk about how valuable that is in these very short seasons, that you don't rush through it, but you're letting the story grow, and that's something that we're seeing here. So.
And in honor of fellow Jedi Master Urza Master and Lord Uther, we're going Japanese style here. Found in the Christmas stocking, we've got green tea mochi. If you've never had mochi little candies, they're gummy, they're fun, they're flavored, and you can get apple pie, and you can get strawberry, and you can get mango, and this one is a green tea matcha flavor, which is good in any context. So we're going Japanese green tea mochi green here, a powdery green from the Psyllium Maas himself.
Wonderful choice.
Yeah. Indeed. The show's direction, like I said, I think that Jedi Master Lord Uther was even more skeptical than Urza. The marketing of this show was a fine line. You can draw Star Wars fans in with a lot of quick cut action and so forth, but you really didn't get a sense of who the journey was for or about or what they meant to each other or meaning to each other. And again, that would have been a hard sell for any marketing department, let alone, one of the biggest entertainment conglomerates on the planet. And so I'm just glad that people are enjoying it and discovering it and not leaving it to the marketing. There is a lesson in there, is that even if the marketing might seem a bit suspect, there's other potential 2025 projects. I'm looking at you, Star Trek Section 31, where maybe the trailers and the teasers and the online ads can't give you the full picture. So I always caution viewers and friends and family, just give it a chance. Maybe it doesn't meet your expectations, and that's, they were right all along. But then you have here where there's so much more of it they're telling you that they couldn't fit into a 30-second soundbite. And it's a richer show for that. That they didn't spoil every surprise, give you every great line. We don't know exactly still where we're going to land ultimately. We hope at Aten, but yes, I'm glad that the marketing didn't turn enough people away that the show would be in danger. I think right now it's performing well, and let's just hope that it continues.
And until we get back to that galaxy far, far away, here in 2025, wishing all of you Pending Rebrand fans out there a very happy new year, and certainly hope to see you next time as we dive into the next portion of Skeleton Crew. May the Force be with you, always.